Well, thank you, Azmi, and do heed those weather conditions. Now, the Independent Examination Board has released their matric results for 2018, and the pass rate is 98.92% and comparable to last year's pass rate of 98.76%, so a slight increase there. And all candidates who passed achieved a pass rate that is good enough to enter tertiary study. And to tell us more about this, I'm joined by the IEB's CEO, Anne Oberholzer. Thanks so much for coming through, Anne.
It's my pleasure, Sakina. Good morning.
So you must be very happy about the increase there in what is already an impressive pass rate.
I certainly am. I'm always impressed when young people do well. And the class of 2018 has done exceptionally well this year.
And, you know, I think perhaps for the benefit of some of our viewers, let's just, get some clarity on the IEB, what the IEB is, and how is it different from the National Senior Certificate Examination?
Well, the IEB essentially serves independent schools. We offer the National Senior Certificate curriculum, and the qualification that the learners get is the National Senior Certificate, the same as the state. All we do is set different exam papers, as does the state and another body called Sakai. So,
and when you say different how?
Well, it's about your interpretation of the curriculum. So depending on how you see education happening, depending on how you see children learn, you will emphasize a particular way of asking questions. If I can use an example, if I were to say to you, define love, the immediate sense is that you must go to a dictionary, open it, look for the word love, and learn that definition. If I were to say to you, what is love? Then a whole different experience happens in your head, because the first thing you will do is say, well, what are you talking about? Love of a mother for a child, love of a parents, a mother and a father, love of God, love of sport, love of music. And immediately your mind is opened up to a whole range of different concepts of love, which means that ultimately you will have a deeper understanding of what that definition is. So we try to emphasize that kind of thinking as a way of inspiring teachers that education isn't just something that's handed out to you and you learn it. It's something you experience. It's something that you have to take part in to understand.
Now, I see this year, and there has been an increase in the number of learners actually taking the IEB exam. What is that a result of?
Well, every year there's a gradual increase just as schools grow within themselves. It hasn't been a dramatic increase. It's about 100 learners. So there's nothing really that's caused that other than particular schools may have had a slightly bigger intake than they've had before.
And just looking at those results, as indicated there in the intro, most of those learners who have passed have actually received entry into higher education. Again, that's a massive achievement.
Well, it is, and I think it's testimony to the children realizing how important education is in our country. Not all of them have gained entry to university, but that's not the beginning and the end of the world either. There are many, many professions and occupations that don't require a university degree. So even if you haven't managed to get to university, a door has been opened that will give you access to employment eventually.
Let's talk about the advanced program courses, exactly what they are and, what sort of segues they then present to learners.
Well, I think the advanced programs, we particularly are proud of them in the sense that they are extension programs. They have been benchmarked as the equivalent of A-levels, which is higher than the Matric. And are there for those learners who are talented in those particular fields. One thing that we do in South Africa is that we don't extend our top end. We do a lot to keep the bottom in play, which is correct. I'm not saying that's a problem. But we must extend the top end. And the learners that do the advanced programs found them particularly good preparation for university study. In terms of the maths, it gives them exposure to the kind of mathematics that they would have at university, so that when they get there, it's not brand new, so to speak. And the advanced program English, which is basically a literature course, just opens up the mind to that kind of discourse that you get at university with tutorials and engaging with the books or texts.
And I don't know whether you've actually followed up on this, but do you find that the learners who actually do take the advanced courses do that to further study in South Africa, or do they take up positions abroad?
No, the majority of them stay in South Africa, which I think is great for our country, that we're maintaining and keeping the academic talent that we have, because we've got enormous talent. Don't let anybody ever tell you that South African education does not produce brilliant students. We up there, we rank with the rest of the world in terms of the quality of our students. And they don't. Look, you get the odd child that will want to go and study overseas, but it's hugely expensive. And, you know, we've got capable and really good universities in South Africa still. So, you know, there's no need necessarily to go overseas.
Indeed. And then also just looking at the private schools and how they performed, and there's huge pride at stake here. So as of last year's results, as it were, 2018, which was the top performing school?
Well, it's very difficult to actually pinpoint one school. I mean, I think that if a school can manage to get all learners through the year, from the most talented to the child who battles with education, that's a good school, because they're obviously serving the needs across the spectrum, and so it's very difficult to pinpoint one school above all of them, particularly with a pass rate of nearly 99%.
But if we hone in, sure, we'll be able to do that.
Well, it will depend on what you're actually looking for. Some people believe that if you get the highest number of distinctions, that makes you the best school. I tend to favour the other side, that if a child has come in who has battling for whatever reason, and that child moves from an F to an E, well, that's actually the biggest achievement, because the children that you're working with have a difficulty in achieving. Bright children are bright. Doesn't matter who teaches them, they'll get A's because they're self-motivated and driven. But real teaching happens with the weaker to the average learner.
And it's very interesting, excuse me, Anne, that you say that, because that is what we would expect from teachers and schools in general. But we find that in some instances, schools will turn learners away because they are not the cream of the crop academically.
Yeah, well, you see, it also goes down to what is the vision of that school. Some schools set themselves up as centres of academic excellence, and therefore they are creaming off the brighter learners and offering them obviously something more than just a matric. But that's their niche. That's what they want to be known for, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we all know that, you know, the cream of the crop is only a certain amount, and that the bulk of the students are ordinary individuals who've got lives beyond school. You know, they're musicians, they're sportsmen, they whatever. They're not just students.
And as you said, you know, depending on what you're looking at, you could pinpoint certain schools as being the top performing school. What about the top performing province for IEB exam?
No, it's also an interesting question, because the IEB is a national organisation. However, you will find a concentration of schools in particular areas. So Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape have got a group of schools. I mean, in Gauteng it's over 100 schools, whereas in, for example, the Northern Cape you might have 1 or 2 schools. Now, to try and compare performance in Gauteng with the performance of the 2 schools in the Northern Cape, it actually becomes a very difficult process, because you're not comparing apples with apples. The makeup of those provinces are so different.
And I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think it's so important for parents to actually understand the messaging coming through from you right now. But Professor Jonathan Jansen, I'm sure you know him, and interestingly, he tweets and he says, what is the point about seeking and getting 8 distinctions in grade 12? Are these really smart students? Or are they victims of, or are the others victims of poor mentorship, I suppose? And ever hear from them again? Do you ever hear from these students again? How many of them actually go on to become great leaders? This is a tweet that's put out by Professor Jonathan Jansen.
Well, it would be good to perhaps do some research on that to see. But certainly my feeling is that these top students do appear as captains of industry. They come up in the political world. They become teachers in their own right, lecturers, university professors, and so on. They do come through. Leaders, not necessarily leaders in the sense that he might be talking about, but they do come through. Talking about whether it's, getting 8 distinctions is a good thing or a bad thing, I think it's a wonderful thing if a child has that inclination. They want to do that, they want to do well, their particular skill and talent lies in academics. Well, go for it. That's what you're good at. Do it. We don't complain about the first rugby team that practices 5 or 6 hours a day the whole way through winter. But good for them. That's what they enjoy. That's what they're good at. Let them get on with it and do it. For me, it's you should never put down any success that a person achieves, because that is what's important to them. Might not be important to you, and that's fine. But it's important to them. And if they want to do well in the field where they're particularly good, well, I'm behind them all the way.
And these learners have worked hard, and I agree with you. We
absolutely.
should not take away any of that shine from them. But of course, this is a never-ending cycle. So we've just had the results from 2018 and the class of 2019 are getting set to, go on their merry way. So what message do you have for them?
Well, again, more or less, what are you good at? And go for that. Do what makes you feel good. Do what you do well. And give it all you've got. You're the master of your own destiny, and if you've got a skill or a talent, make sure you use it, because otherwise it's wasted. And our country needs all the talent it can get.
And lovely speaking to you. Thank you so much for coming through. And thank you to IEB CEO Anne Oberholzer, the Independent Examination Board. They've released their matric results for 2018, and the pass rate 98.92%, and that up from last year's 98.76%. And of course, the 2018 pass rate is a 98.92%. Worth saying again, because it is absolutely remarkable. And congratulations to the class of 2018 from the IEB exams. And just a reminder again, that number from SADC, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. If you are struggling, that number is 0800 456 789, and those lines are open should you feel a bit anxious. If you're feeling a bit depressed at the moment, do call that number, and we'll be talking more. We'll be crossing to our reporters across the field about these matric results that have been released and will be released tonight again. So let's take a quick break.